Hello, hello, everybody. 1 minute, 1 minute. All right, all right. Oh, you guys have no idea what kind of day I've had. You're lucky that I'm here. I just got in this minute, like now from Tallahassee because, I love you guys. I love you guys. All right. So listen. Welcome to my kitchen table, right? If we've not met, I am Lorna Owens. I am the owner of Desert Sage Lifestyle Wellness Company. And while we're getting acquainted, I'm going to pour myself some tea. In my teapot, I have a Journey to Wellness tea, and I'm just going to make it an iced tea. So you now know you don't have to go to a lot of drama. Just brew your tea, get some ice. If you like lime or lemon or whatever it is, put it in there. You can do anything you want. You know why? Because it's your business. How you all doing? Mondays are fabulous. I guess what, guys? I finished my last law case in Tallahassee. Done. So I can spend all this wonderful time with you. All right, so tonight I have an amazing guest for you, Dr. Nancy Scanlon. She's a professor at Florida International University, my old alma mater. She's a big deal in the hospitality field, and she writes and has done some research and has had something published about tea, iced tea. You ever wonder where iced tea comes from? Well, Dr. Scanlon, welcome, welcome.
And how are you doing today?
I am wonderful, thank you. So let's raise our cup of tea. I know you have some iced tea, so let's raise some cup of tea to the people. Mm,
I'm going to get
delicious,
mint.
guys.
Right.
Guys, you know everything about me. So if you see me looking in the foreground, I have a studio audience. That's what I call them, my neighbors. I have a studio audience. All right, Dr. Scanlon. So tell me a little bit of where were you born?
Actually, I was born in Boston, right
Oh,
on top of Austin Hill, down Beacon Hill.
lovely. And tell me a little bit of your journey educationally, becoming a professor now at FIU. I know it's a long, illustrious journey, but share it with us.
Well, basically, I mean, I did what all of us did right out of high school. I went and got a bachelor's degree and then went on my merry way in the hotel industry. And I worked for Hilton and Marriott and interstate hotels along the way. But at some point, I ended up at the University of Delaware.
Ah,
And I decided to get a master's degree, which I did. And I got it. Actually, my master's degree is more in history, food history, than anything else. And that was sort of, I've always been interested in history. And
right.
as a child, I lived in Europe from the time that I was 5. So I was always involved with history. And then I got a PhD and I started teaching, and I've had a really fun teaching history from NYU in New York to Switzerland to Hawaii to
So let me ask you about Switzerland. What were you teaching in Switzerland?
I was teaching hospitality management in Switzerland, actually in a very small town called um, right outside of Zermatt. And it was great fun because on Saturdays I would hop the train to Italy and I would go into Domodossola and do my
Wow.
market shopping and so forth. And so I've had a very interesting teaching career.
Right. I know for me, Basel, because my dear friend is from Basel, and Geneva, because that's where the World Health and all of that. So that's my Switzerland thing. But Switzerland is kind of on the list if I can manage it for this year. So hopefully this year I would have gone to Switzerland for the first time. But that must have been something amazing. I think about the Swiss Alps, but also hospitality. Did that mean hotel or it covers? First of all, scratch that. Does the hospitality field also cover restaurants?
Yes, I started out with Hilton Hotels and food and beverage management. And so, like most of us, I had worked restaurants, going through college and so forth. So I ended up in food and beverage management.
Okay.
And then that kind of took off. That's where I ended up in the hotel industry from both a property and a corporate perspective.
Yeah.
And I was teaching what I know and training people and helping to get them to be better managers.
Okay. So, we see on television like Restaurant Rescue or something. I don't know if have you ever seen that show?
Pardon?
Have you seen the show called Restaurant Rescue? Have you ever seen that?
I've seen a tiny bit of it, and
It's not.
actually I didn't really want to watch it.
Oh my goodness. So listen, listen, listen. My deal is tea. And you and I have spoken about teas in the
Well,
past.
this got to be kind of interesting because the great thing about my career is that I've been able to pursue a variety of issues. I just got off a Zoom call with the UN and the women on talking about nuclear disarmament, right?
Right.
And while that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, it is. At one point in time, I was teaching in Switzerland. I was assigned to the United Nations Women's Committee. And so we get into a lot of issues, particularly about sustainability and issues on a climate change basis, on a global basis.
Yeah, so let's segue a bit into teas. I said to folks that you would be um, helping us understand the history of iced tea because a lot of times we feel that iced tea is a worldwide consumption thing and everybody knows what iced tea is, but let's start at the beginning. So the floor is
Well, let me tell
yours to
you, not
start.
everybody knows iced tea.
Okay, so
I
let's
mean,
start at the beginning.
for 20 of these years that I was rambling around Europe, iced tea for me is my beverage of choice. For some reason, the cold tannin in iced tea, in brewed iced tea that's been chilled, that's my afternoon pick me up.
Ah,
Okay. So I would walk into a restaurant in Italy and I would ask for iced tea, and they would look at me as if, what are you talking about? Or I'd go to England and they'd look at me and, it was almost like, you know, no, we don't serve iced tea. We only serve hot tea. So I got around to a point where I would order a pot of tea brewed, a bowl of ice, and a cup, and
uh-huh.
I would make my iced tea. But in 2024, when I got back into Europe after COVID, I suddenly realized that iced tea was everywhere. And
Do you
while
think America made that happen, or it's just in general the tea industry is beginning to uh, rethink itself, including herbals causing that tea? What was your
it's
understanding?
just kind of interesting. I walked into Fortnum and Mason, which is the mothership of grocery stores in London, and there's iced tea. There are even and part of actually, that's an interesting question because part of what was driving Fortnum and Mason was their Muslim community and wanting to have a non-alcoholic beverage, which they asked Fortnum and Mason to actually bottle in a champagne bottle.
Is That's interesting.
So they had a whole variety. They had a whole variety of flavors, right? Both herbal and black teas and green teas, and they're in a champagne bottle. They look like a celebratory drink.
Right.
And you can actually, to some teas, the early teas that we're looking at in the US, some of the punches included ginger ale, for instance, to give it a bubbly effect. But so that's part of what was driving that chain. And then Nestle and Nestle got involved here, and so did Coca-Cola, so did Pepsi. And I was just looking for another name.
Tesla or Unit Tesla or so?
They got very involved with this, and the bottles that we're used to seeing the individual portion bottles, right,
Right.
are all over the place in all of those, just, the quick pickup delis. If you go around the corner from Buckingham Palace and you're in the park, there's a stand, and here's this stand with bottled iced teas. It's
And you're saying that this is new because, like, sitting in America was a big deal. We always have iced tea. We
yeah.
have
I
sweet
mean,
tea, we have iced tea, we have all.
and we had companies like Arizona Iced Tea were the first ones in the US to really jump on the bandwagon about getting us bottled. It wasn't that we didn't drink iced tea, we did, we made it at home. But they're the ones, along with a couple of the other companies, that really got us started on the single portion and the large portion pre-made. As you and I both know, it's very easy to do a large amount of iced tea. So uh, that's been going on in the US, but the European market picked it up, and anywhere you go, you're going to find it now, which is very interesting. 85% of the tea that's consumed in the United States today is iced tea.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay.
Right, and the Europeans and the Southern Europeans and North Africa, all of this has picked this up. Again, it's a non-alcoholic beverage, and that sort of goes along with the trends that we've been seeing, right, in this country, of the younger population actually backing away from the alcohol as much and going to the non-alcoholic beverages. We see it on restaurant menus, all kinds of things. It's really picked up some movement.
So let me just put a pause there before we talk a little bit more about iced tea. You mentioned that the newer generation, they're not consuming that much alcohol, and that on restaurant menu, you're seeing some semblance of non-alcoholic beverage. And I think if someone is consuming alcohol, we perhaps don't recognize that there's a change afoot. But you're saying from your industry, because you're part of the industry, that yes, there is a change and you are indeed seeing that change.
Yes, very much so. I mean, sir, I was in a restaurant the other night, and I looked at the menu, and there's four, and very clearly, they're mocktails, they're non-alcoholic beverages. We've always been able to have like a Bloody Mary without the vodka,
Right.
right? But these are mocktails, so they're taking popular beverages and just adding some flavors and taking away, but they're served in the same glass. They're the same sort of feeling of having a special beverage.
So it sounds like from what I'm hearing from you, it may be correct to say that the United States is the birthplace of iced tea. Is that so? But when do you think, when did this happen?
Well, quite honestly, actually, this is kind of fun. I thought everybody would get a laugh out of this. I started working I started writing about this last year when I was at a conference in Dresden, Germany on tea. You'd be amazed at the amount of organized tea conferences and attention that's paid to tea in Greater Europe as well. But besides that, so I wrote an article, and I thought everybody would get a kick out of this. This is from the Overseas League Club, the Royal Overseas League Club in London. And again, it's all about
Wow.
this tea and the different, just sort of a timeline. But let's get back to that for just a moment. Now, Americans have literally always had, to some degree, iced tea. The basics of tea, right, came across during the with the early settlers. Tea was always there.
Right.
But when we got we when and we saw a lot of evidence of that with the Boston Tea Party. where they dumped 320 some odd casks of tea, loose tea, into Boston Harbor. And basically, they were protesting the tax that the British government had put on tea, on colonies, in order to raise cash, sort of a tariff, if you might think of it in that way. But Americans have enjoyed tea, but when you got into, say, Washington, D.C., when you got into the middle part of the mid-Atlantic, that climate gets very, very warm. So as a result, people started making tea that was tepid, wasn't exactly really hot. And of course, not everybody's had the type of access we have to, ice cubes, right? And ice houses and that sort of thing. So they were drinking a beverage that could either be sun tea or brew tea that had been left to sit. For instance, one recipe in one of these cookbooks says if you want to serve iced tea at the dinner meal, then you need to make it at breakfast. And we see really starting in 1879 with this book on the Virginia Housekeeper, where we start seeing recipes actually in the cookbooks for iced tea. And here's Fanny Farmer's, the original Fanny Farmer's in 1896, calling for iced tea. Right? And recipes, some of them, if you wanted to find out what to drink in 1920, you could go to this book and you would find tea with different alcoholic beverages. Infused, not infused, but actually incorporated, and it was called tea punch. Ginger ale, a variety of ingredients, but the whole point was this was a cool beverage to drink, not a hot beverage to drink.
But how did it spread to the north? Because they're cold. And so why would how did it spread to the
Ask
north?
me that question.
In America, which area, which region drinks the most iced tea?
That question I quite honestly can't answer for you. That it just, the whole concept, it probably saw its biggest growth with the Civil War. You probably saw people coming back from the South and in having had iced tea and wanting it. Trade, all kinds of different reasons could have had the concept of iced tea traveling up the North Atlantic coast. And summer, as we know, in the North can be, really warm. And then, of course, you're going west. So how all of our food and beverage trends have transferred themselves around this country is in itself a marvelous story. I mean, you go to a restaurant and you're eating, on one side of the restaurant has Asian foods, and then you're looking at the influences of Mexico and South America, and then you have traditionals, you have roast beef, you have traditional, what we call American foods, which actually were a transfer of Northern European food cultures that came in, that started to come in with the early American settlers. And all of this, our wonderful immigration paths have brought wonderful different concepts for us.
Do you see iced tea transforming itself from the lowly, when you went into I don't know if you'd go into a five-star restaurant back in the day and say, can I have some iced tea? But say you could, but do you see it transforming itself from like this, you get a glass of iced tea, to what we now know, some of the things that are happening in Michelin star restaurants? So for example, where you describe the things that
I can't think of an American restaurant that I've gone into and I always ask for iced tea. And sometimes I get a very, I get a very nice presentation, and sometimes I just get, a beer glass with iced tea in it and a
Right.
straw. But I always get, it's always available.
Yeah. So, but now too, though, what we're having, like you say, the big tea makers are getting into transforming iced tea from the singular thing in a glass to what, for example, we carry in our store, which is from Copenhagen. It's a sparkling tea. And it's in a champagne bottle, and you
That's right.
serve it in a champagne glass.
A
And it's
glass.
a big deal.
That's right. And it's given the same presentation. And quite frankly, there isn't any reason why it shouldn't. There are, a large percentage of people in the world that don't consume alcohol.
Right.
So why should they be deprived of a celebratory beverage?
Yeah, I like that word because when you experience, for example, Copenhagen iced tea, and that was made by a wine sommelier. He was trying to pair wine with some sweets, couldn't do it at his restaurant, mixed up batches of teas, and now we have these amazing teas. We have one that's more black tea forward with Darjeeling, Assam, and all like that. A lot of our customers like the one that has some hibiscus in it, and then you have the green tea thing, but it's a kind of beverage that people gift and feel really confident about it. It looks upscale and it tastes upscale. So if I'm hearing you right and being a part of the industry, that is something we all can look forward to and use it, as you say, celebratory.
And again, if you're having a wedding, right, you certainly don't want a bottle that looks like this on the table,
Right.
right? Okay. So why can't you have, a champagne bottle on the table and
Yeah, and
every
it pops the same way and you treat it the same
I'm
way. So yeah.
so sure about the fizz.
No,
You know,
this one,
yeah.
Copenhagen has the same amount of power, and you have to treat it with the same respect as you would champagne. If not, it's all over the place. But people are really, really liking it. So, a couple things. One is, what do you predict is going to happen in this space from the hospitality industry? And I know you have a cookbook. I know you have books out. I know you have articles out. How can people intersect and follow you? Not only do you write about, say, tea, but you the process that you undergo with anything else you might want to put out there, be it a newsletter. But I
Okay.
know you have your book because I bought that book.
Well, there's lots of things I'd like to put out there. And I just taking some time in the past year to just take a look and see. I spend quite a bit of time. I'm on my way to England and Scotland and doing some exploratory um, article writing and hunting food and beverage. I belong to an organization called Les Dames de Scofier, and this is women in food, women restaurateurs, women chefs,
Wow.
women food writers, all kinds of things. And so we looking at the way in which beverages and food are being, actually the demand for them. Let me put it that way.
Right.
What is the demand? And one of the things we're looking at is, for instance, I'm in the process of actually starting the research on will tea grow here?
Realty what?
Will tea grow here?
Oh,
And
okay, got
is
you.
it a
Yes, yes, yes.
reflection of
Yes,
climate change
yes,
impact?
yes, yes.
I mean, I was in Tanzania, and I know this sounds a little abstract and absurd, but I was traveling in a Jeep, and this was maybe about 15 years ago. And we're traveling in a Jeep going down the side of Tanzania, right? Down towards the border. And we're going down, and there's a huge gorge on one side of us. And it's very green. And I'm going, I smell something. What do I smell? I smell tea. And the next thing I know, we're passing a tea plantation. And I can see people out in the field harvesting tea. So we pulled in, and they were really wonderful with us. We went into the barns and saw how they gathered tea, and then how they put it in huge um, sacks and put it up in the top of the barn to dry out a bit, but not too much, because there's all kinds of things that will happen. But there is an environment, there is a physical environment in which tea grows very successfully.
Oh, no, no, no. Well, Tanzania, some of the teas that I carry here, my favorite tea that I carry, African Gold and African Goddess, that's from Tanzania. It's from a small group of specialty tea farmers at the foothill of the Kilimanjaro. It's the best tea that I've had in my life. And it's the climate. I mean, it has to be the fact that they're blessed with the terroir. It's and I can't get enough of it for different reasons, but I'll be in Tanzania this year and I'm going to make sure that I work out something that I can regularly get those teas because my customers love it. Also, as we're winding down, University of Florida is working at growing tea in Florida. The idea is that it could replace our citrus crop because the diseases that have destroyed it. So in High Springs, the professor is Dr. Professor Brandy Lee, University of Florida. Yes, and they're working on some tea in High Spring. There's an Asian lady there that has a little plot. And so that is happening. So I'm giving my fingers crossed that we'll have some great teas out of Florida. Yes.
That would be wonderful, because I think we're going to be looking, the tea industry is going to be looking for alternatives, locations for growing.
Yes.
It needs a specific environment at a very temperate temperature, not too hot, not too cold, not too wet, not too dry, to successfully grow tea.
Okay. So let's see what we get out of Florida. I suspect it's perhaps going to be more like an Assam or a Darjeeling. But Professor, we have to go, and I thank you so much for sharing with us any passing thoughts as we wrap up today at my kitchen table. I am Lorna Owens. So don't forget to go to desert-sage.
I'll give you some address for if somebody has any questions, they can uh,
Okay.
send them
So
to.
yeah, please do, please do, please do.
Okay, well, thank you, Lorna. I really just love having a chance to chat with you about this and a variety of subjects. But guess what? The American tea business is worth $34.3 billion. And the estimate is that by 2033, it will be $72.9 billion in the Americas. So
That
you want something to invest in, invest in tea.
Invest in tea. Yeah, that makes me a very happy person. Hey guys, drink more tea. It's good
Yeah.
for you and it will be good to you. Don't forget to go to desert-sage.co. We'll have tons of teas there, shop. Or you can come in my actual physical store in DeLand 101 Artisan Alley. And listen, 15% of everything we sell in our store goes to train 100 midwives for Africa. Finally go to our website, April 26th. We're having our literary jazz brunch here in DeLand. I know, Professor, you've come in the past. It is a wonderful time, and 100% of the proceeds will go to support the work we do. So listen, I'm out of here next week, Monday. Join me at the kitchen table, or personally joining me in my kitchen. My virtual kitchen will be Chef Sandy Moret. She is a vegan chef, and she's going to show us how to prepare some simple vegan recipes. So, Professor Scanlon, thank you. Peace and blessings. We'll
Take
talk a
care.
lot. Be well. Be well. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. So, guys, we are out of here. The professor is gone, and so will I be gone too, right? So we're leaving meeting right now.